So you think your baby has cow's milk protein intolerance or allergy. Don't panic, it's okay. It's actually very common. You can still provide a whole and nourishing diet for your baby, whether you're breastfeeding or you're formula feeding, or maybe you're giving both. So stay tuned. In this video, we'll go over what to do for both of those scenarios. Hi there, I'm Dr. Amy. I'm a board-certified pediatrician and the founder of Kinder Digital Pediatric Clinic. On this channel, I answer common questions from parents just like you. I'll go over the science behind what we do know, and I'll have an open discussion with you about what we don't know, because really science and medicine, we're still learning about so much. We'll go over medicine, nutrition, lifestyle, mental health, parenting styles, all the different aspects that go into a healthy childhood. So maybe your pediatrician has diagnosed the cow's milk protein intolerance or allergy, or maybe you think that your baby has this from my last video. And by the way, in either case, if you haven't seen it yet, I really recommend the first video in this series where I go over the science and physiology behind what's really different between cow's milk and human milk. If you're not sure if this applies to you and your baby, or you just want to know why does this happen, I'll link that video up here, so check it out. Now that video explained what intolerance is, why do we get it, and for this video we'll focus just on solutions for babies. And in the next video we'll talk about dairy for toddlers and beyond in a more general way. If you are a new expecting parent, congratulations. Maybe your baby's not born yet and you're just exploring some of your options. And in that case you might think, well, I don't know if my baby has this symptom, or will they have cow's milk protein intolerance, so how do I plan? In that case, our data shows that if you have a strong family history of what we call atopic disease, so things like asthma, eczema, allergies, if there's a strong family history, especially in close family members, then that's correlated with a higher chance the baby's having cow's milk protein intolerance. So I actually recommend you check out the solutions here so you keep it in the back of your mind as you're planning ahead. Now we're going to start with babies who are just breastfed. If you're only giving formula, then stick around, we're going to talk about that as well. But for breastfed babies, it can seem like, I'm only giving human milk, my breast milk. How can the babies have cow's milk protein intolerance? And actually, this happens a lot. Even if the baby is obviously not getting direct dairy products, the dairy that is being consumed by mom or whoever's doing the breastfeeding can actually pass through the breast milk and still affect the baby in the same symptoms that we see if the baby is taking the dairy themselves. Remember from the last video, we're talking about different ratios of protein, so that heavy casein load can definitely get passed on. That's why even if you're breastfeeding, cow's milk protein intolerance and allergy can still happen for your baby. So keep an eye out for those symptoms. Now this solution, in my opinion, is both easier and harder. Easier in the sense that you control everything that the baby takes, but harder because giving up dairy, especially in the Western culture, in our culture, it is very hard, and I know how hard it is. Cheese, yogurt, cow's milk, and I'm certainly not saying that you have to, every mom has to cut out dairy. I'm a big proponent of the fact that our bodies are all different and unique, and there's actually not one universal diet for any of us. And the same goes for your baby. So whether or not the baby actually reacts to the dairy that you might consume while you breastfeed, that's the key here. So I really believe in taking on a almost experimental mindset where sometimes we just have to see what happens to know whether something is good for us or for the baby in this instance. So if your doctor or you think that the baby has cow's milk protein intolerance or allergy, the most effective way to tell is actually to cut dairy out of your diet and just see what happens. Again, I know that's so hard, and what makes it even harder is that this is not an overnight thing. So it takes a while for the milk content to change, and we say, in 4 weeks, most people will have seen an improvement if dairy is indeed the cause. And by 6 weeks, almost everybody would have seen a difference. So if you think that's you, I'd say pick a time, give it 4 to 6 weeks of 100%. That's milk, cheese, yogurt, anything dairy. Give it that 6 weeks just so you know for sure if that made a difference. And then observe your baby. The symptoms we talked about the stool, gassiness, fussiness, eczema, if those things all improve, you have your answer. And if those things don't make a difference at all, you also have your answer. It's my job as a doctor to explain the science behind it and to guide you through some of these choices, but you know your child best. And both you and the baby are unique. So you need to listen to your body and do what's right for you. And again, it's not to beat ourselves up about it. It is just a factor of sometimes babies don't tolerate the milk proteins that we see in cow's milk. And in that sense, if you are able to do the experiment and you find out this is the cause, then you're saving your baby from potentially a lot of chronic inflammation in their body. So we know it affects the gut, the skin, but there are many other ways that it can affect the baby even without us knowing. And I guess one good thing is these days we have so many substitutes. This must have been a lot harder 100 years ago, but today with milk, yogurt, and cheese, there are plant-based alternatives. So a lot of my patients and the moms, they have done well with those alternatives. Now for formula. You might have been nervous thinking, oh no, formula is made from cow's milk. So what can be a solution for this if you are giving the baby formula? But don't worry, there's actually a very good solution for this. Now remember, the problem with casein and the baby having too much casein and the cow's milk proteins is that they are bigger, bulkier, harder to digest for our human guts, especially for the babies. Now, formula science has really made impressive progress in the last few decades. They're trying to get it as close to breast milk as possible nutritionally. And when they realized that cow's milk protein intolerance was an issue, there are actually many types of formula specifically to address this. Now I'm going to show you this with a little magnetic toy kit. So imagine that every one of these magnets is what we call an amino acid. That's a basic building block of protein. All protein in the world are made up of chains and they fold in specific ways depending on their order. So imagine this long chain here is a complete milk protein. It's a long chain of amino acids. And the breakthrough in formula science is when we started hydrolyzing the formulas. This process of hydrolyzation, really it just means chemically taking apart the protein for you. Because remember, the symptoms and the inflammation comes from these big proteins having difficulty being broken down by our gut. So if they already cleave it for you and make it smaller, then that's the solution for cow's milk protein intolerance. So they take this whole thing and they break it down to, let's say, smaller pieces of this size. There's one, there's another one. You get the idea, so on and so forth, right? So then you're left with smaller pieces of protein that, as the baby ingests them, takes less work for the gut to break down, less inflammation. There you go. Now there are different types of hydrolyzed formulas, and the one that most people would go to is called partially hydrolyzed, which means there's still protein chains. There's still a chain of amino acid, but they're much smaller. And a lot of the partially hydrolyzed formulas actually try to mimic the whey and casein ratio as well of breast milk. So they tend to be a lot better tolerated. So partially hydrolyzed formulas would be my first line recommendation for babies on formula who have these symptoms. Now I'm going to leave some links down below the video for a few options that I think did a good job tweaking their formula and that my patients with cow's milk protein intolerance have reacted well to. They include Gentlease from Enfamil, there's Similac Pro Sensitive, there's a Gerber option, and also there are some European formulas as well that are available. Now there are a lot of subtle differences between the European and American formulas, so I'm also going to link a great blog post I found that really goes into all the differences between farming practices to regulations, just in case you're interested in that option. And also leave some links where you can purchase the European formulas if after reading the differences you decide that's better for you and your family. Now next, you might be wondering if these hydrolyzed protein chains are making it so much easier to digest, why not just go all the way? Why not have, separate amino acids in the formulas? And they do have that option. It's called completely hydrolyzed formulas or fully hydrolyzed. But they're actually not the first line recommendation for most families for three main reasons. Firstly, they're a lot more expensive. In fact, if your baby ends up needing an amino acid fully hydrolyzed formula, I recommend you actually talk to your pediatrician about writing you a prescription because most insurance companies will cover that. Secondly, they don't taste that great for most people. I've tried them myself It tastes a little bit fermented. I think because maybe the nutrition has been broken down so much. Now, actually some babies do fine with this though, especially if they've had that since birth. And there's some other options with some flavors added. So if your baby ends up needing this, there are a lot of ways to get them to tolerate the taste. But right off the bat, a lot of babies tend to not like it. And thirdly, but most importantly, it's simply not needed for most babies. Remember that in breast milk, there are casein and whey, so our guts are made to break down protein. It's really the overload that's the problem. But a normal amount of protein breakdown, no problem, and it shouldn't cause any symptoms or inflammation. So most people's symptoms would just go away with a partially hydrolyzed formula, and there's no reason to then go for the amino acid fully hydrolyzed option. However, I've also had patients that do need the amino acid formulas, and again, that's completely fine. So definitely don't be afraid if this is something that your baby does end up needing. And in my experience, a lot of babies who need that actually have cow's milk protein allergy, so with antibodies and a stronger reaction. So these are the most common options for babies with cow's milk protein intolerance, especially in the first 6 months when they're relying on milk or formula for their nutrition before they start eating food. Once again, I encourage you to experiment because only you know what's best for you and your family. Try the different options and take notice of what's working, what's not. If you have some other solutions that have worked for you, please leave a comment below and let us know what's worked for you. Or if you decided to try one of these options, also please let us know how it's going and how your baby's doing. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video today. The next video, we'll talk about toddlerhood and beyond and how to think about dairy and the different options there. This channel is all about bringing you the highest quality pediatric health information in an open dialogue with a focus on practical advice. So until next time, I'll see you in the comment section below.